welcome to Good Game, the show for gamers by gamers. I'm Bajo.
And I'm Hex. How long has it been since our last zombie game review, Bajo?
Oh, at least 3 weeks.
Oh, about time for another one then, I think. And this week it comes in the form of Dead Island Riptide.
Time to die.
And we may be setting our phases to fun with the new Star Trek game. Or maybe not.
We're going to be surrounded here pretty quick. Weapons ready. Prepare for...
And more tiny power. But first, can you guess the game for this week?
Gonna sail away to the news, Bajo?
Sure, Hex.
Sail away, sail away, sail away.
Good game.
Section 8 and Aliens Colonial Marines developer Timegate Studios has been forced to pay over $7 million in damages and has lost the rights to their Section 8 franchise. The developer took their publisher South Peak Interactive to court in 2009, claiming they were denied royalties for their work. However, the United States Court of Appeals ruled in favour of a countersuit from South Peak Interactive, alleging Timegate had not spent enough money on developing their games.
Being in the 8th Armoured means being on the front lines of high-risk missions.
The Australian Federal Police have arrested a man from Point Clare on the New South Wales Central Coast, who they say is the self-proclaimed leader of infamous hacking collective LulzSec. The unnamed man, known by the alias Ozshock, has apparently taken credit for LulzSec's attacks, which targeted organisations such as Sony, Nintendo, and even the CIA. He now faces 3 separate charges relating to other attacks, which carry a maximum prison sentence of 12 years. The second auction of failed publisher THQ's intellectual property has taken place, with some big franchises finding new homes. The action-adventure series Darksiders was sold to Nordic Games, along with several other franchises including Red Faction, MX vs ATV, Destroy All Humans, and Supreme Commander. 505 Games acquired the rights to Drawn to Life, and Gearbox acquired the rights to the long-dormant Homeworld.
Good game.
The ShootMania games have been around for years, offering highly customizable, intense racing action. But now the series has branched out into shooting, with ShootMania Storm.
When I first started playing this, Hex, I felt like I'd been put in a time machine and sent back to the 90s. This is seriously old school, pre-Unreal Tournament old school.
Yeah, and the graphics aren't going to stress out any modern PCs, but it's not really about the graphics here, it's about how it plays. This is an online-only competitive shooter, so don't expect any campaign or even any bots. This is fast-paced fragging in its purest form.
Yes, there isn't even a button to change weapons. Everyone has the same pew-pew laser thingy that's somewhat like the tribe's disc launcher, except there's no splash damage. It's all about leading your target and shooting where they're going to be. Landing a hit isn't easy, but that just makes the kills more satisfying.
You can fire 4 shots in quick succession before having to wait precious seconds for it to recharge. So if you spam your shots and try to take them down with one big flurry but miss, then you'll be leaving yourself open to the more conservative player while you wait to recharge. Each fight comes down to a satisfying dance of tricky strafing, accurate leading, and smart ammo use.
There are 2 other weapons though, but they're context sensitive, which means they're only available to you in certain parts of the map. If you find yourself in a corridor, you'll find your gun changes into a grenade launcher, perfect for dealing with any pursuing players. And if you're on a ridge or near a window, you'll get yourself a one-hit kill sniper rifle.
They do a really poor job of explaining that though. I mean, for ages I was just wandering around, wondering how all these other people were getting sniper rifles and grenade launchers. And then when I did get them, it took me ages to figure out how or why I had them. I mean, a simple tutorial or an explanation would have been nice.
Yeah, it's not very clear, and I'm not sold on the whole idea, to be honest. You can get into a groove once you know the map, but I'd still prefer to be able to change weapons whenever I choose.
The movement kind of threw me off a little bit too. In general, it's speedy and encourages lots of jumping. There's even a gliding move that lets you float a bit, which I liked. But when you land in these weapon change areas, you inexplicably lose the ability to jump. It just threw me off my game a few times, man. I expected to be able to do some sweet jump and dodge only to find my feet stuck to the ground.
Yeah, when it's unexpected like that, it does break the flow of things. The game has 3 main modes. Royal Mode is the most familiar, featuring up to 16 players with Elimination Deathmatch. There's a capture point in the middle, and players are awarded points for hits, eliminations, and a capture.
Matches are short, and to stop the last few players from running around trying to find each other, a giant tornado starts pushing everyone into the center after the point has been captured for a final showdown. It's a really fun mode, and it's a great starting point for players.
There's also a joust mode, which is a little rubbish. It's a 1 versus 1 winner stays on mode, where the first player to 7 hits wins. Players need to charge up their weapons at various points around a small arena, which makes every shot count. So unless you're the best player in the map, then you'll probably spend most of your time spectating.
Then Elite is an interesting 3 versus 3 mode. One team plays defense, while the attackers try to kill the defenders while trying to capture a point to win.
The kicker is, the attacking team only ever has one person playing against the 3 defenders, while the other 2 attackers are watching through your eyes.
It's not as unfair as it sounds though, as that solo attacker always has that one-hit sniper weapon while the defenders have the standard pew-pew laser. Captures happen quickly, so the tide of the battle can turn at any time.
But these modes are really just the tip of the iceberg. The Trackmania games have always been known for their user-generated content, and this is no different. ShootMania comes complete with map and game editor, and I think in no time at all we'll be seeing crazy new user-generated game types, weapons, and maps.
I was a bit disappointed with the map created though. I mean, compared to something like Halo's Forge, this just felt a little limited and basic. Everything needs to be placed at right angles and in straight lines. It just seems unnecessarily restrictive. No doubt the community will make the most of it though.
I know the game hasn't been out for very long, but there isn't that much of a community there, which is a little bit worrying. I think at most we saw a couple of hundred people playing at any given time worldwide, but the people that are there were a friendly bunch.
Yeah, and one thing I liked was the leaderboards it's always putting you in. After a match, it'll tell you where you currently stand in your state and in your country and the world. It compels you to play just one more match and work your way a few extra spots up the board. It definitely scratches that competitive itch.
Well, what are you going to give it, Hex?
Well, it's hard to rate something that has so much of its future and eventual content resting in the hands of the community, but, you know, I'd give what's here a 7.5.
I'm going to give it 7 out of 10. Now, Tiny Power.
What if you design a game that's better than Minecraft? Then everyone will think you are awesome, and Megan will have to like you.
So how do I make a game that everyone wants to play?
Well, first, you need to find out what games people love to play.
Yes.
Searching the web for pictures of Ryan Gosling reach around.
Norm, what the F?
Sorry, Megan. I just needed to see your game collection. Thanks, bye. Modern Warfare 1, Modern Warfare 2, Modern Warfare 3. Edward Penis Hands.
That last one? Not a game.
Grunt.
Hi, Trey. I just need to... Oh, dear God.
Let me get this straight. You want to make an MMORPG, RTS, FPS platformer, which is also a driving game and a sandbox builder for console, PC, and iOS, incorporating both linear and non-linear JRPG storylines in a sci-fi/medieval setting with flight and tank simulation, with Connect dancing.
And a retro vibe.
If anyone wants me, I'll be in Nuketown.
Why are you wearing earmuffs?
Good game.
No, we're not sick of zombies yet. The dreaded zombocalypse is still lumbering out of our PCs and consoles. Continuing the tropical undead plague of Dead Island comes its new sequel, Riptide. Story-wise, Riptide picks up right where the last game left off. In an attempt to escape the infected island, you find your way to a ship. Here you discover that you and your other zombie-immune buddies have been roped into some plan by a military-controlling corporation who are trying to use the infection as a weapon.
I've already administered 3 doses.
So how much longer? You said we'd have results by now.
Ah, those covert military-controlling organizations, Hex, when will they learn?
Yes, fools a lot of them. Naturally, all hell breaks loose and you have to fight your way off a sinking ship, only to find yourself on another tropical island hellhole fighting for your life once more. And while this time it seems they've hired actual Australians to voice the Aussie characters, they've really boganed it up with a terrific reel of Ocker slang.
Listen, I trust this asshole about as far as I can throw him.
You're not telling me anything I don't know.
I think the accents are my favourite part of the game, Hex.
Bloody-o.
Bugger them.
You can import your character over from the first game, and all your skill trees and choices will carry over, or you can choose from a predefined set of skill trees, and that means everybody starts at the right level at the start of the adventure. Not surprisingly, your first task is to find your nearest encampment of survivors, who no doubt have an unending list of jobs for you to do.
Cables and batteries should do it. Will you bring me some?
Being the one that's immune to zombie infection makes you everyone's first choice to go out and run errands and collect supplies and find lost survivors and bring parts back.
Found it.
Although one of my first jobs was to help with fortification, and I don't know why they couldn't at least help me with that. Oh, you want me to put up a whole bunch of fences? Sure.
All right, let's put the barricades right there.
Get the skinny woman to do it. Yeah, no, you guys can just watch. I don't need a hand or anything, it's cool.
I wasn't even supposed to be here.
Even though this game started off with a pretty exciting intro, it was disappointing how quickly you settle into that humdrum of fetch quests and running errands. You spend a lot of time scavenging, spamming F to search every suitcase for items to sell, and of course fighting off a constant pouring in of infected every few meters or so. Not a whole lot has been improved upon, and after a while I realised this is pretty much the same game, just on a slightly prettier island.
Yeah, it certainly looks a lot nicer with some nice views and crisper visuals, and it softens the at times overwhelming gore to be hacking it out amongst bushels of pretty flowers. But the combat hasn't really been improved upon. You pretty much still stick to the old kick and whack formula for most zombies.
Send you to hell!
Although there are some great situations that allow you to use the tools you have to take out groups of them at once, and that's always satisfying.
You'll also encounter familiar specials, bile spitters, exploding zombies, and of course heavies that are easiest to take down if you basically hurl every weapon you have at them until they drop. New to the sequel are the Drowners, who did everything they could to spoil our leisurely boat ride hex.
One huge improvement in my opinion is the checkpoints for respawn after death. There is nothing worse than having to run halfway across the map to your body where you died. It's exhausting. Here, you pop back to life never more than a few meters from where you died. However, any kills or damage you've done to any zombie remains, so if you had one hit left on a heavy, one shot will then take him down. And this means the consequence for death now isn't really much more than losing a bit of cash, so I found myself getting a little bit lazy.
Yeah, and cash is everywhere, so it's not really balanced, is it? I think you should at least have to restart the fight or just something so it's not so easy. I like that quests send you far and wide, and that gives you that opportunity to hop in a vehicle and get some easy hit and run XP. But the layout of the land forces you to take more risks and get out and walk more, and I understand why they're doing that, but it also feels a bit obvious. You'll jump in a car, drive down a road, and then discover it's blocked off a few meters along anyway.
Yeah, and I thought that given you could access everything by boat now, that would really change that, giving me an easier route back to the encampment, but no. It just feels a little cheap. That said, vehicles were never really my strong point in the first game, and it seems like nothing's changed, so I'm probably better off just walking anyway. I don't even know how I did this.
Nice parking job.
Yeah, thanks. Movement also feels a little bit clumsy though. I was constantly getting stuck under things, and I mean, you get stuck everywhere.
Yeah, that stuff drives me crazy. And quite often there's boxes or things built up in a way like a staircase, begging you to climb up them, but just trying to get up them is so awkward, and the jump... I think Dead Island's strength is still finding those blueprints and making custom weapons, because that at least adds variety to the combat. Adding electricity, nails, and barbed wire to everyday items takes something from ordinary to deadly. I especially like those wolfy claws. But just like the first game, everything is better when you're doing it in co-op. In fact, I wouldn't recommend playing this solo at all, because plodding through those fetch quests on your own is very tedious.
I just threw a bomb in the water. We weren't on the final code though, so our co-op session was pretty limited, with repeated crashes and some pretty awful lag. All in all, it's not a bad game. I mean, neither was the first one. It just doesn't really feel different enough to warrant a sequel. I mean, to be entirely honest, it feels like a really big DLC pack. I mean, these are the same characters on an island with the same objectives to complete. There's just a few extra zombies and weapon types.
Yeah, that first game was surprisingly fun, and this is more of the same if that's what you're after. But ultimately, I was disappointed by this because I was hoping they would do something more inventive, and the design still feels sloppy, and that's just not good enough second time around the island, so I'm giving it 6 out of 10.
It's 6.5 from me.
Good game.
Run program. All I ask is a tall ship and a star to steer her by. When it comes to voyaging out into the final frontier of space, you need a bold form of transport, one that's crewed by a team courageous enough to explore strange new worlds, strong enough to seek out new life and new civilizations, and to boldly go where no one has gone before. So when it comes to exploring the unknown vastness and emptiness of space, you need the NCC-1701, also known as the USS Enterprise. Good job, men. The name Enterprise has graced many different classes of ship: Excelsior, Ambassador, Galaxy, and Sovereign. And while it has undergone cosmetic and engineering overhauls, it's always been more than just a transportation vessel. It's a living, breathing community of the galaxy's best and brightest, working together to expand our knowledge of the universe and carry a message of peace.
We'll have to take that risk. Make it so.
This mythology of a hopeful, desirable future is continued in the design of the Enterprise. Clean lines, soft edges, brightly lit personnel quarters. She was built with humans, Vulcans, Orions, and alike in mind. Oh, well, hello there. It's not impossible to imagine a crew actually walking its long corridors and manning its many stations, all the way from engineering up to the transporter room. Unlike the Normandy, which was built for battle, or the Millennium Falcon, which was designed for smuggling, the Enterprise was constructed with diplomacy and strategy in mind, and it's been the thinking man's mode of transportation for an entire sci-fi generation. While being a crew member of the Enterprise does tug at the heart of every trekker, what we really want to do is captain the ship and try our hand at taking the helm. When we were eventually able to sit in the captain's chair, it's often only served as a mechanic to take us from one location to another. But that's not what captaining the most legendary ship in the Federation is about.
Captain, the bridge is yours.
Kirk and Picard showed us that sitting in the chair, commanding the bridge, is about managing people, thinking quickly, taking the Enterprise to the very edge of its capabilities, and knowing that she'll always hold true.
Good luck, fair weather, and never forget that risk is your business.
Space might be disease and danger, wrapped in darkness and silence, but maybe that's why the Enterprise is so important to the lore of science fiction. After flying into science fiction history at warp speed, one thing is certain. History will never forget the name Enterprise.
Good game. Thanks, Goose. Hex, I am happy to admit that I love Star Trek, old and new, everything about it. I believe the reboot and movies are both very solid. I believe Star Trek is responsible for birthing modern sci-fi as we know it today, and it is perfect timing for a game to come in and knock it out of the park. Just not this one.
You're enjoying this, aren't you?
I assure you that I am not.
Sorry?
Even though this Star Trek game has its own story and is set between the two films, it still manages to feel like a rushed movie game. It's a cooperative shooter where you can play online or split screen as either Kirk or Spock. After a prologue where both are at each other's throats, the story goes back to the Enterprise embarking on a rescue mission to an experimental Vulcan power station sitting near two binary stars. I thought it was such an underwhelming intro, Bajo. I mean, I get that they're trying to build tension and be like, ooh, how do they get to that point? But then you're thrown into 3 seconds of cover shooter, then explosion.
Captain, grenade!
Back to the Enterprise.
It is your move, Captain.
Yeah, it's a bit confusing at first, but I like that whole intro. I thought it was very cinematic, and, you know, Kirk and Spock are being Kirk and Spock.
Your choice was valid, Captain, but highly predictable.
Predictable? Since when have I ever been predictable?
That is precisely why the move was predictable, Captain.
Oh, yeah, I thought it was all right.
All right. Well, the Vulcan race are trying their best to rebuild their civilization on a new planet. To speed up the process, they created a device called the Helios machine, but the station is remotely shut down and begins to be torn apart by the two stars. This first section is actually the tutorial, but it's full of some pretty solid co-op ideas, such as picking your way through this solar flare section in 3D space. I mean, mean, it's nothing we haven't seen before, really, but it gave us hope that this might be better than what we've come to expect from a movie game.
Yeah, and there's some solid sci-fi ideas in here too, and sometimes that's all I need, especially if I'm already a fan. That's enough to get through it.
What's going on down there?
The radiation from those binary stars is making communications difficult.
And the cast from the films lend their voices to this game too.
They're operating on emergency power and are struggling to maintain altitude.
And that helps a lot, especially Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto playing Kirk and Spock.
Captain, in spite of your seemingly endless desire to stretch your legs, I must remind you that you are still a Starfleet captain.
But then I miss all the fun.
Plus, just like in the films, Chris and Zachary sound so much like Shatner and Nimoy, it just makes my heart skip a beat.
I will not leave this vessel until my crew is safely out of danger.
I like this one.
There are a few that you do not like, Captain.
Yeah, they do a great job. Unfortunately, as you progress, all the game's issues just become unforgivably frustrating, and all these problems really hamper your experience to the point where you just become really sad that it all went so wrong.
What the hell was that?
Problem number 1. Tedious hacking minigames at every turn. If you're playing on your own with an AI, you can sometimes order him to hack things for you for most of them, which is a welcome relief.
Spock, hack that keypad.
I am bypassing the keypad's program controls.
But there are still mandatory co-op ones. Playing with the AI also has its downsides, though.
I must request permission to join you, Captain.
Spock, are you sure that's within protocol? Time to waste. This way. You're a genius, Spock. Let's go.
Having a Vulcan as a member of your away team would be essential to the success of this mission.
This way.
I am the only one on this ship that has experience with the Helios machine.
All right. Great. Now there's 2 of you guys driving me nuts.
Spock sure does like to run, Bajo.
Yes, it's a comedy of AI errors. In fact, the glitches do help to keep things a bit entertaining, except when your AI partner is stuck somewhere and you can't progress, forcing you to restart the checkpoint.
Commander, I need your help with this system.
Playing with the AI does have one other advantage, though.
Over here!
You can order him to a location, which can help you work out how to actually get there. Even in the early missions, I struggled to know where to go, and I'm checking my tricorder every few seconds just to find the marker, and it shouldn't be like that. It's a classic case of poor level design.
It's infuriating, and it only gets worse. I mean, it goes to show how important clear direction and visual markers are for gamers to be pulled through a level. If you look at something like Dead Space, for example, you have to use your locator a fair bit to get an idea of your next objective, but much of the time the game is just subtly guiding you with light, enemies busting through doors, or just something to get your attention. Here you're just faced with samey-looking backgrounds and zones that just confuse you.
Yeah, it doesn't help that you're not having much fun either, so you just want to get there as soon as possible. The worst example of this is in this facility, so let's talk about that for a moment. You're instructed to deactivate 3 power cells. These are hidden under the floor, and using your tricorder, you can kind of follow the yellow lines to figure this out. But to get to these power cells, you have to find these hatches, which allow you to go down below and pull them out. The biggest problem is everything looks the same in this room, and as you can see in co-op, it's very difficult trying to work out where to go.
That worked. Let's keep moving.
In earlier parts of the game, they try to help you with audio cues to help you find your objective.
Captain, look up.
But here, we either missed it or there weren't any, and so we just ended up wandering for ages. And I'm still not sure if the way we actually did it is the way the game intended us to do it.
Like we mentioned before, this section is hampered a little bit by limited view and split screen, but really that's no excuse, and I think it speaks to the bigger problems of level design.
Absolutely. It took us 30 minutes to pull out 3 things and activate 1 thing and then leave the building. It was ridiculous.
30 minutes is a long time.
It's a long time. After this, we encountered a small underwater section, which was also quite fiddly and frustrating, and then the game just gets worse and worse from that point on, and finally wraps up.
It's such a shame, Bajo, because the cast do such a great job and the story is solid. It's also full of what should be exciting action sequences, such as where you go outside the ship here and use person-to-person teleporters to solve puzzles. Cool idea, but then it took us 5 or so minutes to figure out how these things actually worked. And then when they do work, they're fiddly and they only work on certain platforms. You die too often from things that don't feel like your fault because you just can't quite make Spock and Kirk do what you want them to do.
Survival would be to attempt an escape from this vessel.
That's not gonna happen.
And this leaves the player feeling cheated and frustrated, like so.
Just like in this medical bay section.
Ah, my leg!
Here, you're meant to go to the medical bay to repair your broken leg or something, and Spock is actually stuck to you for the whole section. But if you get too close to a wall, you get stuck, and you feel like you're in this endless three-point turn minigame. Once again, you can see what they're trying to do here, but it feels like nobody tested this section and they just said, all right, that'll do, let's move on.
Yeah, I mean, it really makes you appreciate games like Gears or even Army of Two that just have these standard mechanics so refined. Sadly, the combat doesn't save it either. There are a few perks and slick-looking sci-fi weapons, but enemy AI is pretty woeful. And while there are a few good enemy types, you'll want to drop things to easy just to make up for the poor shooting.
All in all, I feel like this game is suffering from a bit of premature sophistication, or perhaps it's just a bit overambitious, because there are all these pretty solid gameplay ideas, but not enough time has been spent on the detail, not enough time has been spent focusing on these mechanics to get them right to back it up.
Yeah, you know, and I think they deserve props for trying to make something more than just a bog-standard corridor shooter, but the basics need to come first, otherwise you're going to end up feeling like you're playing an old game or that you've got some kind of handicap the whole time. It's an opportunity missed, and you get the sense that it could have been so much better with some polish instead of length.
The worst part is, Star Trek is such a big brand now, and they have so much right here. They've got a solid cast, they seem to have good assets, it's a good story, there's some nice visuals. I even like the enemy. The fact that there's Gorn as the enemy is pretty hilarious. There was even an epic ship battle.
She seems to be holding together, sir, but I don't know how much more of this she can take.
It's just that everything that is done badly in this game shouldn't be done badly in games anymore. I feel like this game needed someone to come in and just go, let's fix this, and then just do a whole bunch of QA, and then we might have actually had a pretty decent game.
Yeah, but that should be standard practice across all games. It's like saying this product shouldn't be broken before we try and sell it to people.
Yeah.
I mean, what I think is really upsetting is that this is such a rich and exciting universe with such a large and growing fan base that it really deserves to be explored. Sadly, though, this game didn't do it, so I'm giving it 3.5.
I'm giving it 3 out of 10.
Shall we finish the game later, or do you concede defeat?
You should know me better than that by now, Spock. I never concede.
Good game. So, did you guess the game for this week? It was Virtual Skipper 5, 32nd America's Cup, the game. A serious sim for serious sailors, you control several classes of vessel and race in both match racing and fleet racing. While the game focuses on the America's Cup from 2007 in Spain, you can also sail in our very own Sydney Harbour. The game was also developed by Nadeo, the team behind this week's ShootMania Storm.
Next week, it's time for some schlocky 80s sci-fi horror with Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon.
And we weren't allowed to have it then, but we can have it now, Mortal Kombat 9.
Over on Spawn Point this weekend on ABC3, we go south of the border and have a look at Guacamelee in our Mexican special.
Till next time, may all your games be good ones. Hex out.
Bajo out. What's the weirdest bug you've had in a game before? I'll tell you mine first. I was playing Dragon Age Origins and I put a mod in and suddenly my wife's head disappeared from here. So I just had her eyes and her face.
I think the weirdest, no, I had one similar in Game of Thrones, remember? It was that weird, like, momentary possession. I was, like, having a serious conversation with someone and then the eyeballs just appeared floating in front of me. That was weird.
That's pretty creepy.